Welcome back, everybody. This is Julio, your motion sidekick. Today's tutorial, we're going to be exploring the 3 most essential tools that you will be using within any After Effects project. We are going to be going over the pen tool, the graph editor, and we're going to be exploring keyframes. We're going to learn how to manipulate those keyframes to make them do exactly what you want. So buckle up, buckle in, let me begin. Battle me, that's a sin. Let's get started. Today we are going to be going over the 3 most essential tools that you're going to be using within any After Effects project. And to do that, well, we're going to go through a After Effects project. I did this quick little sketch that we're going to turn into an animation. Let's go ahead and bring that in, and you can do so by hitting Command-I on your keyboard. Now that we brought in our image, let's go ahead and create a new composition. Click OK. Bring in that sketch. Under Scale, let's take this all the way down to about like that. Lock that layer. Now, this is just a really simple sketch that I drew on a piece of paper. I took a picture of it on my iPhone, and then we brought it into After Effects. So nothing too crazy, just really simple. The first tool we're going to learn about is the pen tool. The pen tool can be found over here in your tool palette. If you hover over the tool, it'll tell you the keyboard shortcut, which in this case for the pen tool is G. My idea for this project is to have this camping scene rotate on. We'll have the moon come in, the clouds kind of animate, and then it's going to rotate off. And as it rotates off, the beach scene will rotate in, and then that beach scene will rotate off. The camping scene will rotate back on. So it's just going to be this rotating loop animation. First thing we want to do is draw this horizon line. Using the pen tool, draw your first point. If you hold down Shift on your keyboard, that'll allow you to draw straight over. Using that same Shift key, you can draw lines that are straight up and down, straight across, or you could even draw them at a 45-degree angle. Obviously, we don't need all that, so I'm just going to Command Z to undo that. Now we have a horizon line. Next thing we want to do is draw our tree. So let's go ahead and start at the bottom here. Now, if you notice, the pen automatically connected the last dot, so we don't want that. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to deactivate the pen tool to say to After Effects, hey, we want to start a new shape. Click the selection tool. Make sure that you don't have any layer selected. G for your pen tool, or if you forget the keyboard shortcut, you can hover over it. It'll tell you G. Draw the first point and then the second point. Now this time I didn't hold down Shift, so it didn't draw the line straight up and down, but it does draw a straight line from the first point to the second point. Now we want to deactivate the pen tool so we can draw the rest of the tree. You can either select selection tool up here in your toolbar, or you can hold down Command on your keyboard, and that turns the icon from the pen tool to a selection tool icon. Click, and that'll deactivate the pen tool on that shape. Now you can draw a new shape using your pen tool. So we're going to draw the top part of this tree. Then again, I want to hold down Command, and that's going to switch my cursor from a pen to a selection, and that'll deactivate it. And then I want to draw the second part of my tree. Hold down Option, deselect, and the third part of my tree. Hold down Option to deselect. So that's one shape layer. We'll hit Enter to rename that layer. We're going to call it Right Tree. And we'll just rename this one to Horizon. All right, let's go ahead and draw our next tree. So click once, click a second time, that'll draw a straight line across. Hold down Command to go to the selection tool to deactivate the pen tool. And you can see how quickly we just drew that tree in. Now you're saying, that's great. How do we draw this moon? Because obviously we can't do 3 points. So to draw a curve, after you set your first point, on your second point, don't let go of the mouse button. And as we hold that mouse button, we see these handles appear. These are called Bezier handles. And the farther away these Bezier handles come away from that point, the farther that line is going to travel before it goes back to the original point. Right there, the handles are really short, so it's going to be like, hey, I'm just going to go straight to that point. But if you want me to follow that handle, see this point right here? This is the point where that line wants to follow before it goes back to that original dot. Let's go ahead and set that about there. Now click your next point. And this time we don't have to click and drag because we just want a point. We don't want a curve on this one. But we do want a curve on this last point. So click and drag. I know what you're thinking. This does not look like a moon. It looks like some weird bean Still with your pen tool selected, if you hold down Option, it's going to change it to the selection point. But as soon as you come over that handle point, it's going to switch it to something like this. And what that's going to allow us to do is modify that Bezier handle without affecting the other side of the handle. This handle is a little too long. So if we just click and drag, the pen tool without hitting anything on your keyboard will automatically switch to the selection tool. So that way you can grab any given point, any curve, anything like that. As soon as you hold down the modifier, which is the Option key on your keyboard, it's going to switch the cursors to these modified icons. And that looks great. That looks good for our moon. Let's go ahead and rename this layer. Hit Enter to rename. Type out moon and then hit Enter again to lock that in. One thing I'm noticing here is that these strokes are a little too wide. So I'm just going to select all my layers here. And under the stroke, oh, I probably should have mentioned this first. If you have a fill on and you're drawing these shapes, that's what that's going to look like. So if you run into that at the beginning, I apologize. I should have gone over that but if you hold down Option, you can click on this fill. It's going to turn it from a fill to a gradient to a radial gradient, and then back to empty. So fill, gradient, radial gradient, empty. And same thing with stroke. So we want it black, and I think we're going to take this down to about 7. Let's go ahead and finish this off by drawing our tent. Click in this empty spot to deselect all the layers, and then go to your pen tool up here in your toolbar, or you can hit G on your keyboard. This will draw your next shape. And then hit Command, that'll turn it to a selection tool, and then you can draw out your last shape. Hit V to go back to your selection tool, and I'm just going to modify, I'm just going to modify that one shape. Okay, now that we have our trees and our tent and our moon and our horizon, the last thing we want to do is our clouds. So go ahead and click down here to deselect all the layers. Go back to your pen tool, G, draw cloud number 1. And I held down Shift to draw a straight line. Hold down Command to deselect that line. Hold down Shift to draw a straight line. Command to deselect. And then last line drawn in. Beautiful. Let's go ahead and rename that last layer to clouds. Hit Enter to lock that in. And then this layer we never renamed. So let's go ahead and name that tent. Hit Enter to lock that in. And you see we have a little peak here on the tent. So what I want to do is modify that line. So if you toggle down content, so under stroke, instead of the joint being a miter joint, we're going to go to a round joint. And we're also going to do that on shape 1. So go ahead and go down to the stroke, under joint, go to round joint, and that's going to get rid of that little peak there. And we also want to do that to these clouds, just so we get a nice soft cloud and not a harsh line like it is. Toggle this down, go to contents, shape 3. This is not going to be the joint. This is going to be the cap. So instead of a butt cap, we're going to change that to a round cap. And same thing with shape 2, stroke, and then round cap. And then lastly, shape 1, stroke, round cap. Okay, we are done with our first scene. Now we're just going to repeat this all with the second scene. If you look at our sketch here, our second scene is the upside down. It's upside down, and that's okay. We can go ahead and draw it upside down. Unlike Netflix's upside down, our upside down is going to be pleasant. It's going to have a hammock. It's going to have a sun. It's going to be nice and warm, and it's going to be relaxing. And just to show you how relaxing it could be, I'm just going to go ahead and draw this in with the pen tool, keeping the explanation to a minimum so you can see just how fast and easy the pen tool is to use and how quickly and efficiently you can draw the scene in. Hold down Option to deselect that. Okay, if you hold Option at this point, you get this icon, and you can change this to be the opposite of this handle. So that way, when we draw this one, it curves back the other way. I'm just going to label this palm 1, deselect that layer, draw our next trunk. Deselect our layer. Hold down the Option to redraw that shape. Modify it just a little bit. I'm going to modify the stroke here. Instead of a miter joint, I'm going to do a round joint, so that way I get rid of these little spikes that are coming out of the end here. And then lastly, and before I draw the rest of the shape here, I'm going to change this over to instead of a butt cap, I'm going to change that over to a round cap. And the reason I did that is because now I can draw the rest of the lines, and they will also be butt caps. I thought that would automatically take the round cap, but it didn't. I'll just go ahead and go in there and change that to a round cap. Let's rename this shape layer to clouds. We'll go with that. I don't know how to spell. Then the last thing we want to do is draw our sun. Hit V for your selection tool. Now we have both of our scenes and they are ready to be animated. We forgot to rename this last layer here, so let's go ahead and hit enter to rename. Next, I want to change the color of some of my layers just to keep them straight. And that sun is kind of far away, so I'm going to bring that in. Now, before we start animating, let's talk about keyframes. The best way I've found to explain this is actually by creating one single line here. Now that I have that line, I'm going to select this anchor point tool, or Y on your keyboard. I have snapping enabled because we're going to put this point down here at the bottom. We're going to set a rotation keyframe, so press R on your keyboard for rotation, and then we're going to rotate this 90 degrees. Now, you see that it goes from 0 degrees down to 90 degrees, and it goes at a constant rate. These are called linear keyframes. It's going the exact same rate of speed from one keyframe to the next. If we want to modify this a little bit, let's select one of these keyframes. If we go down to Keyframe Assistant, let's go down to Easy Ease Out. And then once you select that, what it's going to do is it's going to ease the animation coming out of that keyframe. It's going to slowly build up speed, and then it's going to maintain that speed till it hits that other keyframe. Now, select both of those keyframes, and the next thing we want to do is an Easy Ease, or an F9. Let's take a look at the graph editor, and the graph editor is so powerful because you can actually see what's going on. So select your speed value. So you'll notice that at the very top of the animation, it's not straight up and down, it's not flat on the ground, it's at 45 degrees, and that's right in the middle of the animation. Now, the cool thing about the graph editor is I'm a car guy, and so when I look at this graph editor, I think of it almost like a speedometer. It's going from 0 miles an hour up to 30 miles an hour and back down to 0 miles an hour. So it speeds up gradually, just like your car. It speeds up gradually, gets up to speed, and then when you go to slow down, you slow down gradually. The cool thing about the graph editor is once you select a keyframe, you have these little handles that you can click and drag. So now what you see here is that you're going to be going in a Tesla. You're going to be going from 0 to 80 in under a second before you slow down. It's going to take a lot longer to slow that Tesla down, right? We'll just reset our curve here. And if we go the opposite way, so we're going to take Grandpa's car and we're going to take it out and drive it around, it's going to take much longer to get up to speed before it starts to slow down. And you can see what that animation looks like. Now that we're up to speed in this thing, we want to be going so fast that we actually can't stop and we hit a brick wall. Let's see what that looks like. Is this going to continually speed up? Now, what if we were to do a combination of the two? What if we drag this keyframe out to here, and look at this. Now it's going to speed up, go really fast for a second, and then slow back down. That graph editor is really going to help you refine your animation to exactly what you're looking for. All right, let's go ahead and go back to our main timeline, and let's go back to our animation here. We want to animate these clouds coming on. So if we go to clouds, hit S for scale, and just hit a keyframe there, and then go half a second in. We're going to unlink the properties by clicking that little keychain, and then we're going to, whoa, the problem here is our anchor point is here. So any modifications we do to the scale, it's going to reference back to that anchor point. So we want to move the anchor point to the middle of these clouds. So there's a couple ways you can do it. You can hold down Command and double click on the anchor point tool, and that'll snap it to the middle. Or you can click and drag that anchor point. And because we have snapping, it's trying to snap to any point that we drag it by, but we want to put it in the middle of those clouds. Now that we have our first keyframe for the animation, we go in about a second. We want to take this down to 0. The clouds are actually going away. So what we want to do is we want to reverse these two keyframes. So right click on your keyframes, go down to Keyframe Assistant, and then Time Reverse Keyframes. And this is going to take it from 0 to 100%. This is where we can start using that keyframe animation that we talked about. Right click on it, go down to Keyframe Assistant, and I want to do Easy Ease. If you go to your graph editor, you can see what that's doing. So this is your speed, right? It's going to go speed up to full speed and then comes slow down. I want much slower when it comes to that actual ending animation point. See the difference? It's very subtle at this point, but it's the subtle things that are going to take your animation to the next step. So let's go ahead and go back. Now that we have that scale animation, I also want to move these clouds. So I hit P for position, and then we want to start these over here, and then let's call this a 3-second animation. So it's going to take 1 second to animate on, 1 second to fully be on, and then 1 second to animate off. And that's how we'll break it up. In the 3 seconds, we want these clouds to go from there. We don't want to do any easing on this one because we just want those clouds to move the whole time. In that same time frame, we want this moon. So let's find our moon. Let's go ahead and set a keyframe for the scale of the moon. And then go forward a second, and then let's scale this down to 0. So you see what's happening here. We're animating from our anchor point, and our anchor point happens to be down here. We want to move this anchor point. Yeah, it might be kind of fun to come from the middle of the tent. So we want to set that to 0. Again, we want to reverse these keyframes, so go ahead and select them both. Time reverse keyframes, and now our animation is go from the tent up to the sky. And we want that to settle into place. F9 for easy ease, or you can right click on it and go to Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. And then under our graph editor, we want this to slow down as it comes in. Okay, and the last thing we want to animate here, I think, is going to be our tent. So we want to set our scale, and it's going to take 1 second to be fully. Let's go back to our main timeline. It's going to be 1 second for it to animate to full scale. Before we animate that, again, we're going to have to move that anchor point tool. And let's go ahead and put it to the middle. And then let's go ahead and move that all the way down to 0, not negative. Right click on your keyframe, go down to Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. Go to your graph editor and then pull that handle all the way out so it slows all the way down. That looks great. Lastly, as this rotates in, I think I want to have the pine trees just kind of sway back and forth as it rotates in. Under the effects panel, search for the mesh warp. Click and drag that mesh warp onto your left tree. Now you see it puts in all of these lines. We don't really need all those lines. We'll just take it down to 2 and 2. Change the quality over to 15. Go to a second in your timeline. You're going to hit your stopwatch to activate the keyframes. Go back to the beginning. Select this middle point of the mesh. And then we're going to move that over here. And then this handle, we want it to be a curve. Let's push this out even more so. That's going to be our first keyframe. Right about halfway, we want this keyframe to actually overshoot. That's an animation term, overshoot. So it's actually going to go past where it needs to stop, and it's still going to be curved. And then when it goes back the other way, it's going to, once again, overshoot the opposite way. And we're actually going to put it about there, and then it's going to come to the end, which is that original keyframe that we had. So it's going to look something like that. Select all those keyframes, go down to Keyframe Assistant, and Easy Ease. Go into the graph editor. Select all your keyframes again, and then grab these handles and then just push them out that way. and then grab the other side of the handles, and I'm going to zoom in just so you're not having to guess what I'm doing. And grab these handles. Oh boy. Grab these handles and then push them out this way. So you can see it's going to slow down every time it changes direction, which in real life, that is what it would do. Beautiful. So now we can see that it settles in to place. And then as it rotates out at 3 seconds, we want to set another keyframe because we want it to hold. Go ahead and select your mesh warp. And then we want this to go all the way to the extreme, but we still want it to remain about the same size. And the reason I'm not moving this point here is because we want that tree to be rooted in the same place. And we want this animation to go pretty fast into play. So we want it to go fast and we want it to hold. That looks great. So now we can imagine that tree coming into place, and then it's going to spin out again. It's going to make that tree bend as it rotates back out of this. I'm going to select the mesh warp, copy that, and I'm going to go over to the right tree, and I'm going to start just a few frames later, and I'm going to paste that. So if you hit U on your keyboard, you can see that those distortion mesh keyframes have been applied to the second tree. And as it rotates out, it's going to rotate this way. So I want the right tree to be affected first and then the left tree. So I'm actually going to offset them this way just a little bit. Actually, now that I think about it, probably the same for the left. Let's go ahead and grab all those blue layers, except for the horizon. I'm going to hit Command-Shift-C, and we're going to call this camping. Now we just put everything into one single layer. And because we want to rotate this layer around the horizon, remember our anchor point tool? Let's go ahead and select that and bring that up to there. So that way it's going to rotate from the middle of the horizon. I'm going to select all my layers. I'm going to hit R for rotate. I'm going to hit 180 degrees because I want this right side up. Get it into place there. I'm going to bring the sun down to where the moon was. And then I'm going to bring this hammock down just a little bit. And then with your pen tool, hit G for the pen tool. Select that first point. We're going to bring it in a little bit. And then we're going to click and drag the second point just to get it into place. Let's actually hide the camping. Let's go ahead and go with sun. Remember how our anchor point is down here? So we want to hit Y to bring our anchor point tool. And we also have the snapping still enabled. So we want to bring that just straight up. Hit S for scale, that's its ending position, and it's going to be at 1 second. And then go back to the beginning of the animation, go to 0, and that's going to settle into place. So we want to hit F9, go into our graph editor, pull that handle over, go back to our main timeline, and that settles in. Now that we have our sun animated, let's animate our clouds. Select that layer, hit S for scale. You'll notice that our anchor point is set down here. So let's go ahead and bring that to the middle of our clouds. And then at the end of the animation, we want to be at 100%. So hit this to add another keyframe. And then at the beginning of the animation, we want that to be at 0%. So it's going to animate in. And the reason why I did both is because we didn't unlink this. So we want to go back to here and then just make sure that it's 0% on the X value, not 100%. And then that'll animate in. Hit F9 for easy ease. Go into your graph editor and then pull that all the way over so that way it comes to a nice slow stop. We also want to animate the position. So hit P for position, hit that stopwatch, and then we're going to go over to 3 seconds because it's going to take 1 second to animate in, 1 second to sit there, and then 1 second to animate out. At the end of the 3 seconds, we want those clouds to be just over ever so slightly, just like that. And they just want to be moseying on over. It's time to animate the trees now. I'm going to do something a little bit different here. I'm going to grab the palm trees and the hammock, and I'm going to Command-Shift-C to pre-compose, and I'm just going to call this hammock. And the reason I did that is because I want this distortion that we use back in the camping, the mesh warp they use on the trees. I'm actually going to grab that, and then I'm going to put it back on my hammock layer and paste it. And you'll see that it affects everything. Beautiful. Now that we have everything animated, let's go ahead and pre-compose everything. And I'm just going to call this beach. So now we have our beach scene and our camping scene. With our beach scene selected, last thing we want to do is bring our anchor point to the horizon. So that way it's rotating around the same point as the camping tree. The horizon also needs to be set. Let's go back to the beach, hit R for rotation, 180. And this looks really goofy, you guys, but it'll come together. Let's hide the beach scene for now. Let's go to 1 second, hit R for rotation, add a keyframe. Let's go back. We'll change this to -180. Because it takes that full second to come into place, these trees are already settled in. So we want the rotation to only take a split second. See how those settle in? The trees start to be affected at 3 seconds. So let's set another keyframe there. And then we want to go forward to 3.5 seconds. And we're just going to set this to 180 degrees. Let's extend this timeline out just a little bit. Let's go up to 8 seconds. Let's bring our beach scene back in. Click the stopwatch to activate the keyframes. And then we are going to go forward the same amount of keyframes. And then we want it to rotate this way up to 360. Our trees are funky, and it's because we're at the end of the animation here on this layer. So we want to actually be at the beginning of the animation. So let's go ahead and click and drag. And if you hold down shift, the beginning of this layer will snap to these keyframes. So let's go ahead and grab these keyframes and then hold down shift again, and it'll snap them into place. Start the keyframes again at 6 seconds. Copy and paste. At this point in the animation, what we want to do is we want to bring in our camping scene again. So copy and paste, move it up to the top, and then we'll just scoot it down the timeline. So now that's going to come back on. We also want to rotate this horizon line. Copy this frame, paste it here. And then we want to rotate that another 180 degrees. So that's going to go to 360 degrees, like so. As that is animating on, we want this palm tree scene to rotate out. That rotation has to go another 180 degrees. This is getting a little convoluted down here, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a mask. I'm going to draw a track matte. So I'm going to draw a new shape. And we got to make this pretty big just to make sure that it covers everything. Under stroke, we want to hold down Option on our keyboard, click once, twice, 3 times the charm. And then under fill, we want to click that. And then let's go ahead and make this black. Grab your camping, your beach, and your camping scene layers. And then you're going to set the track matte to shape layer 1. And we're going to reverse that. So there's scene 1, scene 2, scene 3. Let's go into each one of these, select all your layers, Command A. We got to turn on the motion blur just to give that animation a little bit more finesse and more fun to it. Same thing with our beach scene. We want to grab those 2 layers, turn on the motion blur, and then go into this scene and turn on the motion blur. Sorry, I should have done that beforehand. I forgot to turn it on, and so that's why we have to go and individually turn them on for all these different groups and layers. Let's go back to our composition. Lastly, we want to select the motion blur for the horizon line. Command A to select all the layers. Hit U on your keyboard. Go back to the beginning of the animation. Hit spacebar to preview your animation. And this looks really good. Sun actually is already up. So let's go into that animation. Let's find the sun. Hit U. And I'm actually going to bring that ever so slightly. Hit U again. And I'm going to bring these up. Let's go back into composition 1. Because we want this to be a loop animation, let's go ahead and go into our keyframes here. So select all your layers, hit U. This will give us our keyframes. Now we want this animation to go all the way. This keyframe here, hit N, and then you also want to start your animation. Hit K and then B for begin your animation. Now if you push spacebar, it should be a complete loop without any seams. Let's select all these keyframes, right click on them and go down to keyframe assistant, go to easy ease, or you can hit F9 on your keyboard just to smooth out that animation. And let's take a look, see what we have here. That looks really good. One last thing I want to add to this is a little bit of texture. So double click on your project panel. Find your paper texture, bring that all the way down to the bottom, and then let's scale this. Command Y will add a solid. We'll make it a brown. Under your shape, go to the ellipse and double click the ellipse. And what that does is it draws a mask on your solid layer. Hit M for mask. We want to go to subtract and we're going to feather this quite a bit. We're going to change the blending mode to multiply. T for transparency. Take that down to about 20% or so. And that just gives it a little nice vignette just so we draw some focus back in on everything. And as I'm looking at this, one of the things I liked about the original sketch was that kind of hand-drawn animation. So I'm just going to add one more effect to everything. So we are going to add the roughen edges. Under the effects panel, let's go ahead and search for roughen edges. And we're going to click and drag that onto our camping scene. And then under evolution options, we're going to hold down option and click on that stopwatch. Under seed, we're going to type in time asterisk 10. And then just to fill out these lines just a little bit, let's change some of these settings here. Under border, I'm going to take that down to 6.5. Under fractal influence, down to 0.77. The complexity, I'm going to take up to about 4. And then the scale, actually, I'm going to bring that down just a little bit to 70, 60, 61%. Now I'm going to copy that effect. Select my horizon, paste that on there. I'm also going to do that to the beach layer and the camping layer. We'll paste those on there and let's take a look. That looks great. I think that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the tutorial. So we talked about the 3 most essential tools used in every After Effects project. We talked about the pen tool, the graph editor, and keyframes. Hopefully you understand a little better what they're used for and how to use them and how to manipulate them to get the look that you're looking for. I tried editing a little bit different this time. I cut a lot of the fluff out. If you like that, let me know that in the comments down below. If not, let me know that as well. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel. This is Julio, your motion sidekick, here to help you on your motion side quest. Until next time, love you guys. Bye.